Recording in
Good
progress.
evening, everyone. This is the Select Board meeting of Tuesday, November 15th, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Anita.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Hello, everybody. So our first item is open forum, and I would like to take this opportunity on behalf of the board as well as the town to thank Patty Doobie and her entire staff and the election workers for running a very smooth election last week. The election involved not only the state election, but also our local election. So Patty and her staff were managing 2 sets of ballots, 2 sets of early voting and mail-in votes. And so you folks just did a yeoman's job, and thank you very much. I know you've all worked very, very hard over the past couple of weeks. You're probably exhausted and are ready for a little bit of a break. So thank you. And then the other thing I just wanted to bring up in open forum, I don't know of others, but over the past couple of days, I've gotten several emails concerning the rising costs of electricity and heating this year, and the availability for residents who may qualify of some help with that. And there are various agencies that are out there who may be able to provide help. So I'd like Jody to task maybe our social worker with or even our health department. I mean, somebody to start looking into this, and also to get the word out and let our residents know that if we discover that there is funding available for them, and how to apply for it, and how to reach it in case we do have residents here in Westford who may be in need of help for heating and electric costs this winter. I know National Grid is making a lot of money supposedly available. So so that's all I have. Anybody else have anything for open forum? Tom?
Andrew, you inspired me. Along the same lines, I think the Westford Food Pantry is experiencing record demand as well. So if people are able to put that in their holiday generosity plans, either to bring over gifts of money or food at the Cameron Senior Center, that would be, I'm sure, much appreciated by many.
Great, thanks. Okay, I don't see anybody else, and I don't see anything from the audience. So moving on to our consent agenda, we have a request to approve the following: a street closure for 10 Church Street to the intersection of Broadway Street on Sunday, December 18th from 4 to 9 p.m. The event is the annual live nativity. The applicant is David Welsh on behalf of the United Methodist Church. A banner for the annual Strawberries and Arts Festival. The applicant is Ellen Martins on behalf of the First Parish Church United. The dates are Saturday, June 10th, 2023 to Tuesday, June 20th, 2023. The location is at the First Parish Church. And use of the town common and bandstand for the annual Strawberries and Arts Festival. The applicant is Ellen Martins on behalf of the First Parish Church United. The date is Saturday, June 17th, 2023, with a rain date of Sunday, June 18th, 2023, from 6:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
In a second?
I'll second that.
Thanks. All those in favor, Scott?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Anita?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, We're at our 7:10 p.m. item, which is a request from the DEI committee to join with cities and towns across the country in taking a stand against anti-Semitism that reflects Westford's character as a peaceable, welcoming community that embraces diversity and belonging. Anita, is this you or Joe Diamond?
Joe Diamond's gonna start it, and I'll join him if I need to.
Okay.
Hello,
Hi, Joe.
how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, good. I'm just trying to get my camera to work. Here we are. Thank you for the opportunity. I clicked join and I didn't hear your introduction, Andrea, but I imagine you said that we're here to talk about the DEI's request.
That's right.
If I might take a minute, since we are a little bit short of 7:10. By day, I work for the community action agencies. I run the association that represents them. The one in Lowell is Community Teamwork, Inc., and they run the fuel assistance program. I very much appreciate the points you made early about the need for some of our neighbors for help to pay for their heating costs, whether it's oil, gas, or electric. The state has provided additional resources on top of the federal resources. So Community Teamwork, Inc. Serves where Westford is within Community Teamwork's catchment area. So that would be a place to turn, certainly for people who qualify. And just to give you a sense of that, a household of four earning $80,000 would qualify, or less would qualify for this, for fuel assistance. And then the Salvation Army has what we call an over-income program, a good neighbor fund, to help folks who might earn a little more than that, but still, in light of the unprecedented costs of all fuels, might need some help. So is Community Teamwork Inc. would be the first place to go. I just wanted to offer that. I would be remiss if I didn't.
No, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. It's also my pleasure to be here to represent the DEI's request. I also wanted to thank Anita for her leadership of the DEI committee. It's my pleasure and honor to now be vice chair of the committee, and it's an opportunity now, which we very much appreciate, to make this request to you all. In light of the anti-Semitism that's been on the rise in this country, in the state, and actually even in cities and towns near Westford and in Westford a few years ago, and in light of the rise, perhaps surprisingly, of white supremacism in Massachusetts. We are all aware, in part because of a recent documentary that Ken Burns has produced, but we're all aware of the rise of anti-Semitism. It's troubling, I think, to all of us on many levels, not just if you happen to be part of the Jewish community, but I think it reflects, our coming today reflects a concern over concern about anti-Semitism, but it also reflects our concern about all forms of intolerance. What we're presenting today is a request that the select board consider preparing or approving a proclamation that would do three things. The first would be to declare that January 27th, 2022, and going forward, be in Westford recognized as International Holocaust Remembrance Day, and that the month of January be Holocaust Education Month, and that the town will adopt a definition of anti-Semitism, which we sent over. And I can read as follows. Anti-Semitism is a certain perception of Jews which may be expressed as hatred toward Jews. Rhetorical and physical manifestations of anti-Semitism are directed toward Jewish or non-Jewish individuals and or their property, toward the Jewish community, institutions, and religious facilities. The proclamations that we provided were ones that were adopted by the town of Danvers and the city of Peabody. We haven't prepared a Westford specific one, which we're happy to do. We also know that working with the school committee would be important in this, potentially, or perhaps important here. And so all of that to say, we very much appreciate and respectfully request that you consider adopting such a proclamation, which of course you couldn't do tonight because we haven't prepared one that was appropriate for Westford. But we wanted to give you if you will, sort of a preview and answer any questions that you may have. And I also wanted to just, again, thank Anita for her leadership and ask her to offer any comments as well.
I guess I would just add that we did go before the school committee at their last meeting, so they are aware that the DEI committee is here before the select board, and they were very interested in this discussion and how it was going to play out, and the eventual adoption, if that is what we do, or recognition of it. And the other piece is just that in looking at the example language of the other proclamations, it would be nice to get feedback from other members of the select board if there's something that you think we should further elaborate on or remove, if there's any sort of language that's uncomfortable, so that we know to prepare that in the draft that we're going to bring to the select board.
Okay. Scott?
Well, since you asked, and I think the language is fine. What I would just observe is that on the, I guess the motion we had for, and just People's Day, there was discussion about, as part of this recognition or this proclamation, there would also be a activity around education for that. So that would affect the schools, perhaps also at the library. I know they'll be good. So to broaden that, so it's not just a day that we say, or a month to say it's proclaimed. We actually have got some action being taken.
If I may, I appreciate that. And in fact, one of the ideas, and again, this is pending further discussion with you all on the school committee, is sort of the incorporation of this information in the curriculum, so that it wouldn't just be on a one day or 1 month basis. So I appreciate that very much.
Other comments? Tom?
Yeah, thanks. And thanks, Joe, for presenting this. I think this is really important and timely, and I'm glad that it's being brought forward. And I had a similar question to Scott, sort of when the time's right, if we could flesh out what the education actually is, I think that would be great, because there's important work to do there. And maybe, Joe, I'll follow up separately. I know that First Parish and some of the other religious communities in town have been looking for a way to have a statement or event of solidarity. And maybe that's something that could fit in the January month.
Absolutely. Several years ago, we were part of a small congregation in Westford. We formed a congregation, a Jewish temple, which has since changed to more of a social group. But the First Parish Church was incredibly supportive, so I'll be more than happy to work with them as well.
I'll just echo what Scott and Tom said, which I think this is obviously very important, and thank you for bringing it forward. I would certainly remind everybody that Westford has seen anti-Semitism here before, and so in light of that, I just think it's even more important that we follow up on the statement that we made 2 years ago when we had incidents of anti-Semitism here in Westford. I agree with Scott and Tom. The educational component, I think, is very important. So, working with our schools, our library, et cetera, to incorporate that into this as well. So, John?
Yes. Yeah, I agree about taking a look at the schools. I saw something on TV the other night when they had some young Jewish students, and they were receiving things over the internet that looked, some very obscene, very brutal type things over the internet. And I think we need to look into some of that. I don't know what we can do about that. But one thing I wanted to note is that the definition is a non-legally binding definition. So it's really a working definition of that's how we're going to define it. And that's going to be the basis for, taking any action that would certainly do away with the anti-Semitism.
I think that's a really great point, John. It is a working definition, and it helps. Excuse me. Sorry, were you going?
No, I'm fine.
Go ahead.
It does help people to recognize anti-Semitism, and the sort of the further statement. There's the initial statement, but then the IHRA, the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliances, give some examples. And I think that all of that is important because sometimes it's hard to recognize, or there's a shock aspect to it. And so that if you have a kind of a clear and compact definition, if I may take just another 10 seconds to read something from Rob Likend, who is the director of the AJC in Massachusetts. We've learned that, and this is in a correspondence he and I have had, we've learned that fighting anti-Semitism is complicated by the fact that many people don't know what makes something anti-Semitic. That's why we need a definition that is in simple, uncomplicated language and provides guideposts for understanding when an event or an action may be anti-Semitic. The only way for a definition to work is for it to become widely used. Every endorsement, every police department, or every high school principal who uses it begins to normalize the definition, and also our collective understanding of how to understand what anti-Semitism is and what to do about it. And again, this is inspired also by the fact that I think it represents a stand not only against anti-Semitism, but against all intolerances. So thank you.
So I think, is there a motion to support recognizing January 27th as Holocaust Remembrance Day in Westford and January as Holocaust Education Month in Westford, both in perpetuity? Let's start. Okay, second. And all those in favor, Tom?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Anita?
Aye.
Aye. And then I think, then I guess, is there a motion to adopt the working definition of anti-Semitism as related to us here tonight?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks. Scott, you have your hand up?
I mean, I agree. I'm just wondering what does it actually mean to have a working definition, but this, which is not legal. Is that what frames the educational program? I mean, it's not really enforceable legally, right? So I guess I'm kind of curious what that actually means, in terms of where the rubber hits the road.
Why don't I let Joe answer that question, and then John, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah.
I think it's a great point. Actually, Scott, I think the elements of my answer come from your question. That is that it does provide a framework for understanding, because I think that often folks, in the absence of a definition, that can delay action. I do think that this could be something that would frame or provide context for an education piece, but not the only context. I mean, I think that there's opportunity in Westford to work from this. The other aspect of it too is that as it becomes more and more common, it would be something that cities and towns, governments, select boards work from across the country. So I think that's part of it. I don't think it's meant to be the end. I think it's meant to be the beginning or an outline of how people can proceed. But it's, in some sense, it's putting a marker in the ground, which I think can always be useful when it comes to further action.
And John, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I just think, while it's not legal definition, I think it just increased the sensitivity of people, as we move through our daily lives and everything else, just being sensitive to things that could be said that might be untoward or something that would be interpreted incorrectly, but just give a sensitivity, and maybe that'll just kind of work its way through society where we're sensitive to that and things improve.
Thank you.
Okay, we had a motion and a second. All those in favor, Scott?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Anita?
Aye.
John? Aye. I think in terms of the proclamation, I think we're going to send that back to Joe and Anita and to the DEI committee for you to work on. And when you have something to bring to us, just let us know and we'll put you back on the agenda.
Thank you very, very much.
Well,
we
thank you.
really appreciate it.
Thank you. And thank you to the DEI for its work on this. Much appreciated.
Thank you. And thanks again, Anita. Bye-bye.
All right. We're at our 7:15 PM item, which is a public hearing for the, it's our annual public hearing on classification of real and personal property tax. So it is a public hearing. I need a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
A second. All those in favor? Scott?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Anita?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and our assessor, Will Nasser, is here tonight to walk us through our classification. So it's all yours, Will.
Will, you're muted.
I think you're muted, Will. Yep, you are muted.
How's that?
Much better.
Okay, so sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair and board members, and hello to the public. My name is Will Nasser. I'm the Chief Assessor for the town. And as required annually, I present a tax classification hearing to the board for tax burden and value information. I'd like to just quickly recognize my board members, Titus Palmer, Diane Holmes, and Dave Flanagan. They're the Board of Assessors that we meet and do all this work. With that being said, I'd like to move to the second slide. Thank you. Fiscal 23 is an interim tax year for the town. So that means value assessments as of 1/1/2022. So when we look at the values and valuing property for residential, again, we're looking at what occurred in calendar year 21. In the industrial and commercial, we look for that information, written returns of information, again, from calendar year 21. And the personal properties, we look at the forms of list, the return of the assets from that same year, 2021. You can move to the next slide, please. So this is just kind of a macro view of what occurred 1 year to the next year. So again, starting on the left side, you have the property classes: residential, open space, commercial, industrial, and personal. And then going all the way to the far right, you can see the overall change. So our residential change is almost 13%. And our commercial, we've changed about almost 15.5%, industrial almost 6%, and the personal property about 2.5%. So the overall value change for the community is over 12.5%. So a pretty significant change. We've eclipsed the $6 billion in taxable value. So Westford is doing well in terms of holding and increasing value from year to year. Next slide, please. So again, this is just a drill down a little bit on those numbers in the parcel counts. So clearly our largest class of property is residential, and more specifically, single family homes. We have 6,450 single family homes. And in the commercial, in the residential condominiums, getting close to 1,500, not quite there, but those are increasing. Our commercial class, we have 266 parcels, so that includes both improved and vacant land. Industrial, 111, and our personal property class, that shifts depending on the year. So we actually closed a lot of accounts. Some of the small accounts were closed, so our number went down on the number of accounts, but the value did increase overall. Thank you. Yep. So some of the comments or value trends. So you do see an increase in the single family count, but that was simply a change that I made previous assessor had the single families with the accessory dwelling units as 2 families, and I changed them back to single families with the accessory dwelling unit. So that's why you're seeing a change. Typically, you don't see that plus or minus for the parcel count. The condominiums, we had the Balsam Circle. I believe there were about 14 units that went in there. Commercial industrial, again, based on market sales of those properties, we did increase those values. And then in our personal property area, there's 2 areas, state valued property and our locally valued property. So the state valued property is very complex. That's why the state does it and simply gives us the number. We review that. That would be AT&T, poles and wires, in Tennessee Pipeline, anything going underground. I certainly don't get out there with a shovel and measure those pipes and conduits. So that's given to us. And then the other area is the about 81% of the total value comes from your mom and pops and all the shops and so forth. So looking again at a total taxable value, just a summary slide for you. The top line is obviously this year, our 6.1 billion and our increase from the previous years. So it's showing a good increase, a healthy increase year by year, but clearly this year has taken a pretty significant leap from year to year based on the 10 years presented. So we talk about all of this and what does it mean? So the term, the tax levy. So the tax levy is simply the dollar amount the town raises through real and personal property each year. It's the largest revenue source for most communities, and Westford is in that group. It funds the town budget. So the estimated levy is almost $91 million. So, whoops. So the tax levy new growth. So that's new growth would be new construction or new parcels created. So those are all pluses, value increases in either real or personal property. So if we add a business account, which is a personal property account, that's added growth. And once we do all that, we convert the new levy growth is part of the Proposition 2.5 calculation. So this year we had over, we had 55,351,355. That's value. And so we translate that by multiplying it by last year's tax rate, and the tax levy growth is that 892,263 for this year. So again, just a snapshot, a look at current year versus 4 previous years. If you look at the 20 and 21, I believe the town benefited, I wasn't here, town benefited probably from the apartment growth. Previous assessor picked up a lot of new growth, and you were well over 1 million in 21 and 870,000 last year. And this year we're right in that area. So we work all year round and we come up with our values, we get those approved, and then we convert the value to tax. So just the mechanics of that, we submit our information to the Department of Revenue, Division of Local Services. That's the branch that I work with, along with Dan, Jesse, and Christine, the folks in the finance area. We complete the recap documents. We hold the hearing, which we're doing tonight. And then I'll submit the choices for tax rate approval tomorrow or the next day to the state. So we start out by, how do we come up with a tax rate? The development of the tax rate is you establish the property values, you get those approved. So that's just straight up showing you the percentages of the values and the total taxable value of the town. So the simplest thing, it's a math equation. We're taking the total taxable value, we're taking the tax levy and dividing it by the total taxable value. So that's where we're coming up with a fraction of 0.01476, or what everybody knows as $14.76 per thousand in value. So if I use the average single family value of 680,640 for this year, multiply it by that estimated tax rate, the tax bill would be 10,120. So in this slide, again, kind of a large macro view. So I'm looking at a 10-year history here. The yellow band shows this year. This is simply looking at single family homes, the value, tax bill, and the percentage increases from the previous year. It's quite a bit of information on here, but generally it's nice to look at to see what the value change has happened with the single families, where our tax rate has been. So that's a dynamic that should be noted, that as you increase the value, you decrease, it's an inverse relationship, your tax rate goes down. And you can see the top yellow all the way to the right, tax bill amount percent increase from the previous year. So we're looking at about an average of about 4.5% actual tax dollar increase. Again, this is an average, so it doesn't mean everybody's going to be exactly that, but it gives you an idea. So we continue on with the development of the tax rate. So we determine a split tax rate, which has not been what Westford has done, but it's part of the process I go through, and getting into kind of the more technical stuff about talking about residential factors and reducing that residential factor. You're shifting the tax burden. There's certain guidelines on that where you have you can only go to a maximum shift of 150%. You can go to the next slide, please. So just looking at last year, what I call the natural value shares. Again, Westford is a residential community, residential town with about 88%, 89% residential. The CIP stands for commercial, industrial, and personal. That makes up about 11% of that. So was chosen last year was a residential factor of 1, which equated to a single tax rate of $16.12 for everybody. And if you go to the next slide, I did do a slide on if there were an interest in doing a split tax rate. The top level is the shift one. Excuse me, no shift would be 1. It would be $14.76 across the board, and then at the very bottom, the 1.5 would be a maximum shift, where you'd be moving your residential rate to $13.84 and putting more tax burden on the commercial, industrial, personal folks with $22.14. So, and there's other options if you were to choose open space and the residential exemption. And I believe the small commercial exemption, I noticed in the past had been chosen, but it doesn't appear in the last 5 years that's gone on. Okay, next slide, please. So the step 6 is pretty straightforward. It's just simply making the requirements of the hearing would be to choose a single rate or a split rate. And then the other options, as I mentioned, would be the small commercial exemption, the residential exemption, the open space exemption. So the small commercial exemption, which had been chosen previously, changes the shift within the commercial industrial class. And the residential exemption, that's typically for Cape Cod communities and higher residential communities, Boston, Somerville, those types of places that have second, more rental property, and you can shift the tax burden within the class on that. Next slide, if you could. So the hearing protocol is presented the choices and options. The board would make a decision, and it would have to be a majority vote. Town clerk would confirm the meeting and voting, and then I would submit those choices to the Department of Revenue. And thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Great. Thank you, Will. Appreciate it. Questions from the board or comments from the board? Tom?
Just folks may recall a few years ago, we did a task force looking at the split rate versus the single rate, and the group determined at the time that single rate was most fair and most appropriate. It's mostly because the math is that it's so heavily residential that to make any difference to the residential taxpayer, you have to make a big change to the businesses. And the group at that time, which was a bunch of individuals from a bunch of different places, basically said it didn't seem fair or consistent with Westford values to disproportionately shift the responsibility that way, and recommended a single rate.
Thanks, Tom. Anybody else have any comments or questions? All right. I don't see any, and I don't see any from the audience. So is there a motion to set the single tax rate for Westford at $14.76? Thank you, Eric or Dan, whoever did that.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, Scott?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Anita?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Aye. It is unanimous. Thank you very much, Will, and thank you for all your hard work on this.
Okay, my pleasure. Thank you for having me tonight. Good night.
Good night. Oh, now I need a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all those in favor, Scott?
Aye.
Anita?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're at our next item, which is a continuation of ARPA funding requests to determine our allocations. And tonight, just so folks know, we're simply, I wanted Jody and Dan basically to just kind of review where we are. We've now received all of the money that we're going to receive under ARPA. Also just update us with any new requests, and then at our next meeting in December, whatever the first meeting in December is when we will start to review proposals again and requests for ARPA funding. So with that introduction, Jody.
Yes, thank you. So I'm going to let Dan go through this for you just to kind of save my voice a little bit, but we'll start off with a summary of projects approved, funding spent, and funding available, and then any new requests for funding. And then also Dan came up with a new spreadsheet that we're just going to show you, and then we'll upload to your packets that kind of group what you've done to date by category, and then we'll have everything ready for the next meeting. So Dan, if you want to take over. Thank you.
Absolutely. So as Andrea just said, we have received all the funding to date that we're going to receive for ARPA, which is $7,417,900, or I'm sorry, $7,417,971. So far, the board approved 45 projects in FY22 for $3,560,000, and 16 more in FY23, totaling just over $621,000. For a total of just under 4.2 million. We've had a few closeouts as well. That total 5,400. So our current balance at this point in time is $3,241,560. Just a reminder, the funds need to be allocated by December 31st of 2024 and spent by December 31st of 2026 in accordance with the ARPA regulations. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here for the new ARPA requests, which of course are in yellow here. I'll review these quickly with you. First up, we have additional tabulators that we need for town meeting. We had originally purchased 500 of them, and at special town meeting, of course, we ran out of clickers because more than 500 people showed up. So we're recommending purchasing an additional 300 clickers. The cost of this is, I'll move over, $8,525. Second up, we have a request from Steve Cronin. 1-ton dump truck was approved at the annual town meeting. However, the price has gone up as it's gone up with everything. So we had originally received $65,000 through town meeting. The new cost is $69,510. So we're looking for just over a little over $4,500 so we can purchase that vehicle in a timely manner, and so the price doesn't go up even more and the quote stays current. Lastly, last week we received one more request from Ellen Rainville at the library. They're looking for some hybrid meeting equipment, which is basically 2 of the owls, which are the cameras that we have up in the select board meeting room at this time. Some cabling, a TV screen, and just also they could host hybrid meetings. They're eager to get back to person with their programs, but people also want to participate remotely. So they are requesting $3,500 for these. So that is all of our new requests at this time. Again, as Jody said, I'll show you the new spreadsheet I set up. Zoom up to the top here. We'll post this online, including the packet, but again, we separated all the approved requests by category, including capital, contact tracing, lost revenue, public assistance, and so on. So again, we'll send this out. It wasn't your packet. I just did this tonight, but we will have this available.
Great. Questions, Scott, and then Tom.
So I got, I know we don't want the money tonight, but I guess the question, Dan, is how long is that bid for the truck good for? I mean, if we wait till December, is that price going to change, or is it locked in for a month at least?
I believe Steve's in the audience. Can we, Steve, do you know how long that bid is good for?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep. So I would say that it's probably good for at least a month, but I can't guarantee that it'll be good until the end of the summer.
Scott, I think you said till the end of December, not the summer, right?
Right, December, right. Our next meeting is this. We'll make sure we're safe waiting until next meeting, or December 10th, right. Whatever our meeting is, that yeah, December, yeah, whatever that meeting is in December, that we're safe waiting that long. That's all.
So Steve, do you think we're safe waiting until our meeting in December?
Yes, I'd say we'd be safe through December.
Okay. Thanks. Tom?
Thanks. Just a process question. I know there's a couple pretty big ticket items potentially on the list. And before we sort of allocate a substantial portion of the remaining funds, I'd want to make sure that everybody who had a reasonable request had gotten it in. I know we've done a good job getting the word out, but I guess it's a long-winded way of just saying, do we want to let everyone else know that we strongly encourage any, valid requests get in, because if we start allocating the final pool, we want to have all the information.
Well, I think probably the town manager's office can, put out a notice saying if, anybody who has, any further requests, to get them in, as soon as possible, and certainly before our next meeting.
Thanks.
Jody?
Yes, the town manager newsletter goes out tomorrow. We'll definitely make sure that's in there, and we'll also send a note out to all boards and committee members and remind them that, they need to get their requests in now. So thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? I don't see any. So just for folks and planning purposes, ARPA will be on, we will be talking about ARPA at our first meeting in December. And we'll certainly let folks know as to what projects we will be discussing at that meeting. So stay tuned. Okay, we're at our next item, which is the 2023 annual town meeting. Yes, we've just finished 2022 special town meeting, but yes, we're moving on to 2023. So the first item on the agenda is we have to set the annual town meeting date of March 25th, 2023, and consider approval of the 2023 annual town meeting timeline. I think the March 25th date is actually the date set by our bylaws, the last Saturday in March. And I think it's been determined that this year that we're going back to that in light of the fact that we don't need to, at least at this point in time, we don't believe we need to be outside for in June as a result of COVID. So here's the timeline. Did folks have an opportunity to look at it? Any questions or comments? Okay, I don't see it. So is there a motion to approve setting town meeting for March 25th, 2023 and approve the timeline as shown here tonight?
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor, Scott?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Anita?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and then our next item is an update from the Access to Town Meeting Committee relative to the provision of childcare for future town meetings and discuss possibility of changing the date of future annual town meetings. So Angela, welcome. And you have to unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Before you moved on to the next item, I just wanted to also point out that if possible, it would be very helpful and it would follow a suggestion from the Access to Town Meeting Committee that we've already discussed. If the board or the town manager on behalf of the board would send something out to the town organizations and agencies and request that they keep the date we've now set for annual town meeting open and try as best they can not to schedule games, activities, things of that nature on that date, which will encourage people to come and that all of them hopefully will encourage people to come as they can. So I hope we can do that.
Can I just ask a question based on something that happened a couple of years ago? Have we checked with the schools to make sure that there are no standardized tests being done on that Saturday?
Well, the date has been checked with Chris and Westford Academy. That I know we've done. Okay.
I just remember a couple of years ago when we ran into that issue when I don't remember if it was SATs.
It was the PSATs were the same day, yeah. But it would just be helpful if the other types of activities were not scheduled. There's some things you can't do anything about, but the things we can do stuff about.
I agree, but that was just the one that immediately came to mind.
Right. And of course, I want to make sure that the voters mark that day on their calendar tonight, if they can, so that they don't end up scheduling a lunch with friends on that day instead of coming to town meeting.
They could schedule lunch at town meeting.
Right, exactly.
Okay. Okay, so Diane, I think you're are you presenting with respect to the recommendations?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I'll kick off. Thank you, Andrew. I'll kick off and then I'm going to direct to Valerie. So Eric, if you could make Valerie a presenter, a panelist in a few minutes, that would be great. And I'm going hoarse, so bear with me. The date change and childcare recommendations are two of the remaining topics that we had deferred for future action, but we're at that point now. Two small working groups led by Valerie were established. The date change group included Kyle Randall and Linda Green, and the childcare working group included Dana Rickert. So those were the two working groups that got established. I'll hand it over to Valerie in a minute, but at a high level, I'll give spoiler alert and say the date change working group really did not find any compelling data or impact that would increase attendance by changing the date. Data generally revealed that no matter what date we picked, we were negatively impacting another segment of the community. So it was kind of a no-win situation. You'd benefit some segments of the community, and then we would find other segments, it would be detrimental to scheduling it during that. I don't think this is new. I think we historically have known this, but we revisit it occasionally. For childcare, the one takeaway is that the communities who offer these programs do offer these programs to reduce barriers to voter access, provide a community service, and really see them as an investment in voters. From an expense angle, I personally see this and equate it as a small cost of doing business in a healthy and successful civic-minded community. So it's more investing in the community rather than how many students, why, when, how many kids, et cetera. So the towns view it as a service that they provide and should provide from some of the communities that I spoke to. Unless there are specific questions there, I'll turn it over to Valerie. And Valerie has a couple of slides that she'll want to bring up, Eric.
Valerie, it's all yours.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. Yep. So Eric, if you have those slides, it's pretty much, there were also two longer form documents in your packet that walk through basically everything we looked at. And the motivation for that really is, looking for like a paper trail, because some of these issues come up every so often. Oh, why don't we change the date? Oh, why don't we, offer this? And sort of one of the things directing this whole committee has been, let's put a stick in the sand to say, we looked at this time and here's what we found. So while the date change is certainly something, to Diane's point, that everyone probably knows in their gut that it really matters what's on the article in the warrant, more so than when is actually the meeting. We just wanted to do our due diligence and feel like we had really kind of closed that loop for this point in time. So we looked at a couple other communities. Oh, I'm sorry, Eric, there were some slides too. Did you get those? It just pulls out the bullet points. It's okay, I can talk to the other document, but it makes it a little bit more visually friendly. If not, that's okay. So for the date change working group, we looked at some other communities who had done comprehensive studies. Christina Green led a working group that reached out to 46 other towns and found out and polled them for when they hold theirs. And basically the takeaway was everyone's struggling with low attendance unless it's a public interest, high profile item. And therefore there was no, we just wanted to make that recommendation that there was no impact. We don't feel that there was an impact to attendance to change it.
There you go, Valerie.
There we go.
Thanks, Anita. Is there any questions on this slide before we move on?
John?
Yeah. Did you consider the change or we changed from May to March, and that affected the timetable or the timing for the budget. Did you look at any kind of impact or effect on the budget, changing the date from, say, March back to May or something like that?
Diane, do you want to take the whole committee view, or do you want me to chime in as working group?
I'll start. You jump in, John. Our perspective was coming at it from increased attendance. Yeah. So we acknowledge that there may be some other benefits Moving up the budget cycle may indeed be one of them or may not be. However, the view and the perspective was, even if we did that, is there substantial evidence that would actually increase attendance? So that was the perspective, that was the lens from which, we came up with this.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Does that make sense? Does that?
Yes, it does. Yes,
Okay.
it does.
Valerie, anything to add?
Nope, you said it much better than I did. So we can move on to childcare.
Yes.
So some of you may remember that the volunteer effort in 2017 associated with the equitable teacher pay campaign offered an entirely volunteer run effort with about 50 children participating due to the high interest of that, the article on that town meeting. In doing so, we sort of looked at how many other communities are offering this and found a fairly substantial list that are offering it in a variety of different logistics. So it doesn't, some of this is just helpful to visualize that it doesn't have to be an unbounded sort of nebulous process. It can be, some towns just choose a certain number of slots. It's a very low bar, like with a movie on and some coloring sheets. And so we just wanted to wrap all of that information up into this that backup document for it to be documented. And as Diane said, really the motive for this is to reduce barriers to voter access, as well as increasing the civic engagement as a community service. And we realized too that you could offer it in March or the next couple years, and it may be low in demand or usage to start, because parents of young children need to know what's available, need to plan for it, need to trust it. So that's our recommendation, that we should offer that starting in March.
Okay, questions or comments about that? Okay, I know one thing, and I know that Jody was in touch with Diane about this earlier today. I know, oh, before I say that, Tom, go ahead. I didn't see your hand, I apologize.
Snuck in there. Just want to express gratitude to the committee working on this. It's great resource to have, great piece of work to have done, and agree that having childcare is just sort of generally important to democracy and giving young parents kind of a ramp to get involved. So very pleased with the work, and I'll be happy when the time comes to support that recommendation.
Thank you.
Scott?
I agree with Tom. I like the idea of the child kit. I guess my question is, as Valerie mentioned, it's been a long time since my kids were little. So, are there, training programs, certifications that parents would feel better about leaving their kids with a caregiver who's passed some kind of a program? And if so, we could plan to get that done before March 23rd. If not, that's fine. But I figured at least ask that question up front.
Valerie, I'm going to let Jody answer that question. Okay.
So yes, if the town's sponsoring it, these people have to be, certified, quarried, all sorts of things. So I did speak to Michelle Collette today in the rec department, and she's, very interested in pursuing this with people who are already able to take care of children in our after school programs, but it is something we need to bargain. So we'll get right on that if the board authorizes this. And the other thing is we probably will need an appropriation. I'm not sure we would get volunteers to babysit children during town meetings. So we can talk about that, whether it's an ARPA request or we would need the funding or through finance committee before the upcoming town meeting. Thank you.
Okay, wait, hang on 1 minute, Diane, just to make sure. Anita, let me hear from the board first, Diane, and then I'll get back to you. Anita?
Yeah, I just wanted to also extend my thanks to the committee for preparing this information and going through everything so thoroughly. It was really helpful to have all of that background information. And I would also support moving forward with the childcare. And I think that in addition to, Angela, what you would say during the last town meeting, special town meeting, you're like, all families are welcome here. And we saw a lot of kids on screens just kind of sitting around and just being with their parents. And I think creating that environment, letting people know that it's okay to have their kids there, in addition to offering childcare, is just really gives, really supports that community service, community feel. So I support that.
Okay, Diane.
Thank you. Just to supplement what Jody said, if we are going to go after ARPA funds or whatever funding, I would like to ask that we ask for funds for multiple years in order to see a trend, to establish a baseline and give it a shot, not just a 1 year hit of providing funds, if that's possible. Because it will take a couple of years to establish the credibility, the visibility of the offering. And the committee has spoken about this time and time again. It's not going to happen overnight. And we want to have the funds there, if possible, to be able to sustain it, to make it a norm within the community.
Jody?
I don't think this would be a significant amount of funds.
Right,
but
right.
I mean, ARPA is limited through, I believe, June of 26. If it was FinCom or budget, it's just in the fiscal year that it's allowed. But I certainly think we can get it going and then find funding moving forward.
Good.
Yeah, I guess my thought would be if we need ARPA funds sort of to seed it and get it going, that's fine. But if this is going to be, this is something we want to be part of the town and part of the services we offer, then I think long-term and long range, we need to plan for this to be part of our operating budget, and to put it into the operating budget. So I think that, long-term planning is where it belongs.
Thank you. Duly noted.
Jody?
Yeah, I just want to mention, I don't think we're talking about more than, $2,000 or something. We're not talking about a lot of money here. So,
right. Thank you.
Okay, so I guess for Jody's purposes, is there a motion to direct her to start the process of engaging in bargaining with which union, Jody?
it's OPIU.
With OPIU.
OPEIU.
OPEIU to facilitate childcare at town meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor? Scott?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Anita? Aye. All right. Jody?
If you could also take a vote on directing or requesting, I guess is a better word, town and nonprofit organizations not to hold events, that would be great. I don't think you voted that at their last meeting.
No, I don't think we did either. So is there a motion to request that town organizations, nonprofit organizations, committees, et cetera, not hold events on Saturday, March 25th, 2023.
So moved.
Second. Diane, do you have a comment?
Yeah, on that, and I meant to add it. The reason why at special town meeting at the Academy, where we heard not complaints, but comments about how difficult parking was indeed because there were other musical events going on at the Academy that night, right? So the more that we could minimize any events and the impact and allow more parking and have it easier for people to park, people may be more willing to come without the hassle of trying to find a place. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Okay, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor, John?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Anita?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Well, thank you, Valerie, and John?
Did we approve the schedule?
Yes, did we? Yes, we did. Okay, and Anita's right. I thought we did. Valerie and Diane and the entire Access to Town Meeting Committee, thank you all very much for your hard work and your diligence and all your research. It's really nice to know that the recommendations that are being made are actually based on, real data. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, we are at our next agenda item, which is old and new business. So we have a request from the Monuments and Memorials Committee to approve the installation of a bronze plaque on a granite stone at the entrance of the Jack Walsh Field in loving memory of James E. and Janie L. Maines for their support and dedication to the Westford Youth Soccer Program. Terry, hi.
Greetings,
you're
hello. Yeah, I'm here, sorry. Yeah. Yeah, so we did meet with the Parks and Rec. I met with the Parks and Rec. Steve Cronin and I both went to the meeting last week, and they approved unanimously to move forward with the proposal, monument proposal as it was put in the documentation. So they have no, they resolved all their questions, and the applicant was there as well, and they were free to move ahead with it. We put it 4 to 6 feet away from the tree to allow for tree growth and everything else, but some minor details, but it was, they approved it. And I think you have that in some correspondence in your packet.
Okay. Any questions or comments? John?
Is that location near the sign for the Jack Walsh Field?
Yes, it is. There's a tree right behind the existing monument, and that the rock will be placed within 4 to 6 feet of that tree, so to speak.
Which direction?
So it'll be in the front. Oh, it'll be behind the tree, behind the monument, behind the signage.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't see any other questions or comments. So is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. And all those in favor, John?
Aye.
Anita?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you, Terry.
Great. Thank you very much, all. Jody, get well.
All right, our next item is a request to form a community behavioral health committee to focus on mental health services and access, suicide and substance use disorder prevention and interventions. And I think Ray, Dick, and Nicole Lavalette are here to talk about that with us. So Ray and Nicole, I'm not sure which one of you is starting, but one of you, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening. Thank you so much for having us this evening. Before you tonight, we are requesting to create a new community behavioral health committee. The committee will take a community-wide approach by engaging our community partners, our providers, and residents of all ages. The committee's focus will be on mental health services and access, suicide, and substance abuse disorders, which will include prevention and interventions. This will include drug misuse, opioid and alcohol addictions, and their associated behaviors to mental health. Specifically, we've listed 6 goals of the committee, in which it's included in your packet tonight. These goals include compiling existing and new data on mental and behavioral health in Westford. We will be evaluating existing programming and assessing our strengths and our gaps. Our target is always prevention, implementing new programs and providing social and health equity to all of our residents. We hope to organize and improve behavioral and mental health awareness and recommend programs and resources for all residents. We are requesting a 12-member composition of this committee, 2 of which are citizen positions, which are included. The positions are listed in your packet memo this evening. Our recommendation for this committee is to meet once a month on a consistent schedule. The co-chair's recommendation is the health director, as well as the community health and wellness coordinator. We have reviewed and spoken with several other communities regarding similar task force committees and gaps in We are in the midst of a mental health crisis in our country, as well as the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Our focus is to provide more resident services for mental health and substance abuse disorders. And Nicole and I are here to answer any questions you may have. And we thank you for your time.
Thank you. Nicole, do you have anything to add to that?
No, Ray did a wonderful job. Thank you.
Okay. Tom.
Really glad to see this coming together, and I think it'll be really valuable for the town. So appreciate your work, and I think the composition and the goals look great. One small thing to think about would be, I think a number of the faith leaders in town who might be very interested in this are not residents of the town. And so you'd think they could take a citizen at large spot, but they're not citizens. So maybe just a little consideration about whether there could be some openness to having some regular role in this committee with some of the faith leaders who I think are, as you both know, often the first stop for some folks when they're in a crisis.
Absolutely. We completely agree, and we're certainly open to adding an additional committee position if you recommend that, but we certainly want them to be part of the process.
Scott?
Yes, I agree with Tom. I think this is a great idea for a committee. I guess one question we as a board need to think about is how we have a healthy Westford committee, which this could be part of. So we're kind of chipping away at perhaps what that committee would be doing. So I would not, not make this committee, but just thinking about how we avoid a proliferation of committees with a proliferation of agendas. But this, I think, is an important one to have. My only real comment is on that composition where you've got, I guess, 12, although 2 are optional. But it's largely staff. And so, if we wanted to have this done with staff, we could just have this done with the town manager overseeing or board of health or some kind of town function. So, I think one of the things that Tom and I learned from the town school safety task force was there's folks in town with backgrounds that are valuable. In that case, private security, related company security, but also just townspeople with strong opinions on the issue. And just thinking about this issue, we do have a suicide prevention network in town. We've got a lot of experience, both raising money and helping out. We've got, I'm sure, RNs who are LPNs, doctors who are all familiar with this, perhaps even some. I doubt any practitioners want to get involved, but there are people who've certainly been skilled with the training, and so is too sufficient, and is it worth looking at? Do we cut out a couple of perhaps town people to make the size manageable, but bring in a few more citizens? I guess my only thought would was wait till we get the applications from residents or non-residents in case of clergy. And to see where that leaves us, but not be hard and bound to those 2. It could be, more than if we get qualified candidates who really want to serve.
Yeah, and I think we always do that when we're looking at the formation of committees anyway, is we tend to be inclusive and include anyone who wants to be on the committee versus exclusive. Anita?
Yeah, I have a sort of a related thought to what Scott was saying, because there are so many other entities that are in town or like staff members who do this or related to this work. And I see that there's such a large composition within the committee that you're proposing here. But I also think the Town and School Safety Task Force, which it seems like I pick on all the time, I don't mean to, it's just the first thing I think of. But TSSTF also looks into like this whole mental piece too. And is this going to be sort of the evolution of TSSTF into this? And then my other question is, like, if we're looking at TSSTF, for example, like the charge of it is to make recommendations, it's to provide guidance for the other committees or boards or staff departments. And here, the first 3, 4 bullets are very specific tasks almost, right? Which I think would then be driven by, I assume, staff members. But is that the expectation then of this committee, that they're going to be implementing this work themselves. And then I mean, I really kind of see two parts of it. The first 3 or 4 where you're creating you're implementing those tasks. And then it's really to inform those second 2 bullets. So it just is different in terms of this charge where you're being told to do these surveys, as opposed to having that committee kind of come up with those ideas themselves.
So let me, I guess, Tom and Scott, hang on a minute, John. Tom and Scott, I'm going to turn to you to answer Anita's first question, which was, is this committee sort of evolving from TSSTF?
So,
Scott.
I mean, I think the answer is yes, it's evolving from, but, I think, Tom and I and the TSSTF itself have agreed that we've met our mandate. There's certainly a need to have sort of an ongoing, touch point to make sure that those recommendations keep on moving forward and to get every so often looked at as necessary. But I think the TSF, with the blessing of the select board, could dissolve in 2023, and this would take up that mental health piece in much more detail and much more strength of background in terms of the people involved.
Okay, thanks. John.
Yeah, I share Anita's concerns on this. It looked like this is going to be a committee. They're going to be operating as a committee. Who do they respond to? Who do they report to? How do they update? Because one of the things we've been missing is some kind of visibility into the opioid situation in town. Regular reports, or somehow that the select board gets information or understands where we are in this. So I'd be asked, just how would this committee operate in that? Are they going to be independent, going out doing surveys and taking action? And under what authority do they take the action? Or do they respond to the select board?
All good questions.
Yeah.
Ray?
Sure. So just to start with Scott, I do want you to know that we completely agree. So we have met with SANS. We've met with several organizations that operate separately within the community that provide both suicide, substance abuse disorders, different programming. Certainly we had 50+ people that wanted to join this group. So we do understand that there are a lot of people that are interested and want to be part of the committee. It was difficult, working with Nicole and Jody and several other entities to try to pare down the list. This is our draft, if you will, but I do understand it's heavy on staff. Certainly we're welcome to any recommendations there. My understanding is we see this as a separate committee from the Town and Safety Task Force, that we would operate separately and individually. My goal would be that we would report both to the Board of Health with a monthly update. We're welcome, certainly open to do that to the select board as well. We have formed a committee here in the community for our opioid settlement funding, in which case that does have to come before a town meeting each year. So that will also be presented to the residents. I don't know if that answers everyone's question. I know Anita had some additional questions.
Okay, thank you. Tom has his hand up, and Anita, if you have additional questions, because my thought is, actually, folks, is that I think in general terms, there is select board support for forming this committee. But I think listening to some of the questions and issues that are being raised, I think we all, and that includes you, Ray, and Nicole, we all and Jody, we need to, I think there's still some questions and issues that need to be fleshed out before we, have a full understanding of, what this committee is going to be, how it's going to operate, what its mission is, to what the reporting is, where it fits within the whole town organization. So not to say, as I said, I think you're hearing that the board supports the creation of this committee. We just still have some sort of logistical and organizational issues that we want to work through and with you collaboratively. So Tom?
It may be possible, Ray, just to pull a couple of the other charters for committees or task forces and see if there's any other topics like reporting. So there is precedent. The Town School Safety Task Force is jointly responsible to the school committee and the select board. I think in this case, it would be I think you'd have more impact over time and have more sort of natural advocacy when it comes to looking for resources or information if this committee took the same form. So essentially had a responsibility to both and had some sort of regular reporting to both. I just think in the end, you're going to want the resources and focus from both the Board of Health and the whole town resource. So having the joint reporting, I think it doesn't hurt anything and will help you get more done.
Anita?
Yeah, the question that I still have is, so the first half of the list of bullets, I feel like are tasks. I just want to understand who's going to be doing that. Are the committee members going to do that? Or is it more like, if we're following sort of the guide of the TSSTF charge, they're reviewing and providing recommendations to, school and select board. Here, you're doing work. And I just wanted to kind of underscore the staff that you are proposing onto this committee, as well as the volunteers, are going to be the group who does the work. Or are you going to be assigning or working with the health department? So health department staff does this work. I'm really unclear on what that part is, because I think we pull in a lot of people to these committees, volunteers or staff. And I just want to make sure the expectations are very clear that they're going to be doing this added work. So I just wanted to have someone address that, please.
Sure. So I'm not sure if Nicole wants to speak, but I should say the health department's expectation for this committee is that our staff would be working actively on this committee. That's why it's so heavily loaded with community health coordinators and myself, where we would be doing the active work of pulling this data together, doing the actual reporting, minutes, things like that. Our hope is that, working with police, fire, and other committee members, that, we'll certainly take volunteer help. But, something I've noticed being here 17 years is there's all these little groups around the community that are doing wonderful, great things, but we'd love to bring that all together and again, include the clergy and folks like that. But that is my recommendation, is that the health department would do this work. And my hope is, Nicole would be part of that process to help us.
Anita? Then
I guess I would say, if you think, Ray, or if you feel like the health department is going to carry this work, then maybe it's rephrasing this so that this behavioral health committee is guiding or making recommendations to the health department on how or what should be included in all these assessments and the assessment data or these evaluations, as opposed to charging the committee to perform this work. And I don't know if that's something the Board of Health would also consider.
Certainly, and the Board of Health did review this document last night, and they were in full agreement. I know Sue Hanley had voted to be a member of the board if and when it's approved.
Nicole, I just want to give you a chance if you have anything to add or any comments.
So I think when Ray and I met, I feel and this is how the co-chair piece came in, because those first few bullets really capture a lot of my role within the community as the community wellness coordinator. So I think there's that balance between the health department and my position. So I think there was that piece, but listening to the questions from the select board today, I feel like there's some processing that we need to do to kind of get some more information together so that we're able to answer your questions better.
Okay, I think that sounds good. I think this is a committee that can become an integral part of, and should be an integral part of, the community. So I think it's important, we do the upfront work to make sure that, we are setting it up and establishing it in such a way that it best serves the community and also is successful. So I just want to make clear the takeaway is not that the takeaway is that we really support you, but we just want to work through all the details to make sure that that we get them right and that we set you off on a path that you can achieve the goals and the mission and that you're successful. So I think maybe it sounds like a little bit more work to do, answer some questions that were raised tonight, and we'll have you back.
Great. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, and thank you for all your hard work in putting this together.
Thank you.
Okay, we are at our next item, which is a request to amend House Bill 4666 to remedy the incorrect address and parcel ID listed on a citizen's petition presented at the 2021 annual town meeting, to authorize the select board to grant an additional general law, chapter 138, section 15, all alcohol package store license to be exercised at 174 Littleton Road, parcel ID number 01700260000. Eric, do you want to basically tell us what happened here and what we have to do to fix it?
Thanks, Andrea. Yeah, real quick, you already summed it up pretty well. I think the big thing is, we submitted the documents to the state following the positive town meeting vote. And we recently discovered that the proponent inadvertently put 175 Littleton Road when they meant 174. In talking with Jody and reviewing the recordings from both the presentations before the select board and town meeting, the owner of Karma did clearly state that this store would be located within Westford Family Marketplace, which is at 174 Littleton Road. So I have the amended proposed state amendment here. I'll put on the screen for you. And the state's just simply looking for a vote of the board so they can continue forward with the approval process.
So basically what we're doing is voting to correct 175 Littleton Road with 174, right?
That's it in a nutshell, yes.
Okay. Anybody got any questions? John?
No question. We're also capitalizing the word "you."
Oh, okay. Oh, up in the top.
Yeah. So it's two changes. Minor edit.
Okay, got it. With that minor edit, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Oh, before we go, Jody has her hand up. Sorry.
Well, and now since we're looking, I'm seeing that 174 Littleton Road is
Oh, yeah,
not capitalized.
Yep, the R should be capitalized.
Yeah, I missed that.
I do apologize. This came directly from the state and we put it in your packet exactly as we received it.
Ah, well, then we can correct the state. Okay, I know somebody made the motion. Was there a second?
Second.
Thanks. All those in favor, Scott?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Anita?
Aye.
Aye. All right, next, discuss next steps for the new center building located at 51 Main Street. As we all know, 51 Main Street did not pass it, the election, although it got more than 5,000 votes in favor of it. And it was not discussed, it was dismissed and not without discussion at special town meetings. So we are now here to talk about what next steps are. And I know Ellen Hardy has asked to speak to us. So if we could make Ellen a panelist so she can speak with us.
Good evening.
Hi.
Thank you. When I contacted Andrea as chair of the select board about 2 weeks ago to ask to have a conversation about the next steps for the 51 Main Street project.
Is it just me or is Ellen frozen for people?
Yes, she is. Come through. Yeah.
Ellen, you froze.
Oh
dear. Hey, Ellen, you're frozen, so we can't hear you.
Maybe if it turns off a video, it might get more throughput for the voice.
Yeah. Hmm.
Can someone call her and?
I was going to say, can we call her now I think maybe, there you are, Ellen, you were frozen. We could not hear you. Oh, now she's muted. Okay. Ellen?
I'm here. Can you hear me? I don't care if I'm there visually.
Okay, yes, we can hear you. Okay.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. So what I wanted to do was to start a conversation about what the next steps were, given that the October 24th special town meeting voted to postpone the discussion and vote for any appropriation for this project until the March 2023 annual town meeting. And as Andrea just mentioned, my conversation with her about being on tonight's agenda was before the vote last Tuesday. And that also failed, and that may change the landscape for the Board of Selectmen. But my purpose in reaching out to the Select Board at this time is to brainstorm with you about what the path going forward from now to March of 2023 might be. And so what I asked tonight is to begin a discussion about your board's thoughts on that path going forward. And I would request that I be permitted to give input that discussion if it does begin, because I have given a lot of thought to the process, not the project. I'm talking about the process that has gone into this, this discussion. So at that point, I will stop so the board as a board can have discussion about what you see as a path going forward. And then if you think it's appropriate for me to share my thoughts, I would be glad to do that whenever the chair recognizes me.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ellen. I think certainly the board has obviously been thinking about this since last Tuesday's vote. I'm sure you won't be surprised. We actually do have some thoughts about moving forward and what next steps are going to be. So I will start with Tom and then Scott.
Sure. So I was just reviewing the presentation that Tom Mahana was planning to give at the recent town meeting, and he highlighted how long this has been in process, how many public meetings there have been, how much committee engagement there's been. It's 5 years, more than 100 public meetings, a number of times at the retreat, close work with a number of the committees. So I feel like that was, at least from my take, was a pretty thoughtful process that involved a lot of people and got a lot of buy-in over time. And I think the only thing that's changed is that the agenda, it was basically struck from the agenda, as we know, and is now moving to the March meeting. I guess I feel like I want to celebrate all of the hard work of the dozens and dozens of people who've worked on this, and have this sort of consensus solution from the people closely involved with it have a chance to go out and communicate and share the needs and share what's going on with this proposal. I'm actually impressed that so many people voted in favor of it, given the very limited amount of education and public discussion we were able to have before the vote. So I don't take any, if anything, I take almost a positive indication from the public based on the large number of votes here that we saw in favor of it. So I guess I feel like we have a good process. We're on a good track. There's a lot of people who put a lot of hard work into this that I feel like really deserve to have a chance to present their hard work for discussion. So I guess my understanding of the path was that this was going to come before the upcoming March town meeting. And I think that's what I would support from here.
Okay. Scott.
Yeah, usually I'm very diplomatic. I will probably be brutally honest tonight. we had a process, as Tom mentioned, we had a 7-year process that went through the select board, the Permanent Town Building Committee, the the planning board for input. At least, well, I guess we say just planning. The Energy Sustainability Committee. We had a good process, and it was frankly torpedoed, and that in that process at town meeting. And I just say it was a majority vote, but we never let anybody present the case for the building. And as Tom mentioned, I'm surprised we got 5,000 plus votes at an election where, in fact, no one was informed as to, at least no one had the chance of being informed at town meeting with presentations as to why this building was required. So I don't know what more we can do for process, frankly, than hundreds of hours of meetings and with multiple committees and open forums with the town, availability of our architects to talk to the town. I'm at a loss for what more we could possibly do.
John?
Yeah, I agree with Tom and Scott. This almost morphed into a we versus them type of a situation. I think a lot of people voted down on this, on the town meeting, thinking it was in competition with the library. And since the special town meeting dismissed it with the idea of moving forward to the annual town meeting, I would support that. I think we need to put it forward at the annual town meeting and then let the chips fall where they may. I think we need to move forward with this. I think the project really provides some essential services for us. I don't think we can leave our IT guys down there in that old fire station too much longer. And if that fails, it's going to be like the town hall that time that we were just looking at it, and somebody yelled down the stairway and said it's been condemned. And I don't think we can wait for that to happen. I think we need to provide that support. So I'd be all for putting in an annual town meeting, article in town meeting.
Anita?
Yeah, I agree with John of moving it forward to annual town meeting and just kind of let it continue to play its or go down its path. And I also was surprised actually with the number of votes that it received on the ballot, considering it wasn't presented at special town meeting. I do also recognize that right before special town meeting, there was a lot of chatter on social media about the project that I think exacerbated or kind of shared misinformation. And I thought, I don't know how much that contributed to supporting not being able to move forward with special town meeting and your motion and stuff, Ellen, but I still am in support of this project. I have not been as intricately involved, obviously, as Scott for the number of years that it's, or Jody, for the number of years it's been planned, but it did seem very incredibly thorough. And we had the Clean Energy Sustainability Committee also in support of it, which I think also had its own barriers and hurdles and stuff kind of along the way. So it seemed like it was really in a good place to be heard by the town. So that's just where I am.
Thanks. I'm certainly on the same page as my fellow board members, which I believe we need to bring this forward at annual town meeting. I believe that the work that has gone into this over the last 5 years from the beginning is an incredible amount of time, effort, energy put in by multiple committees and multiple members of the community to bring this project forward. I would say perhaps the one positive thing that it has gone on for 5 years is that it has improved over 5 years from where it started to where it is now, particularly with the inclusion of the Clean Energy and Sustainability Committee, making this a net zero building, and so that it can be a sort of landmark building for the future. And I think all of that needs to be applauded, and all of that needs to be brought forward and to annual town meeting in March. And the other part of this, I think, as John just said, is we have town employees who are just working in, inadequate places and facilities. You're right, our IT department is a step away from a disaster. We have a veterans agent that is inaccessible to our veterans, which I think is inexcusable, to put it bluntly. And I think that we, as a town, need to also offer our employees adequate safe spaces to work and accessible spaces to the community. And then finally, one of the aspects of this new building is a larger meeting room. And a larger meeting room is essential for the workings of democracy and for the workings of having our town residents and our folks who are interested, who want to participate, whatever their, their thoughts, their positions are. But in order to make that happen, and in order to have the participation in democracy that we all want, not just at a town meeting, but in the sort of decisions that the board makes on behalf of the town, we need to have a place where people can gather and can gather comfortably and make their views known. And so I continue to support this project, and I continue to believe that we need to move it forward at March 23rd. And I think as a board, we need to think about how we communicate this to the residents and communicate our support for this. So Scott, you have
respond to that? Thank
hang
you.
on 1 minute, Ellen, because I think
Absolutely.
Scott has his, Scott, do you have your hand up?
Yes, so I mean, because as a matter of process, this is what I think mostly, apart from the outcome, what disturbed me about the town meeting issue was we put this item on the agenda for town meeting at one select board meeting. We set a warrant, we took positions, we had multiple occasions for anybody to object that this did not belong on the fall town meeting, special town meeting agenda. And no one in the entire town had any objections until the night of the meeting. And I think as a matter of process, if there's an issue with, does something belong on that by the selectmen's own rationale, that should have been brought up to the selectmen in one of our open meetings before town meeting night. That's why I think I'm mostly annoyed.
Okay, yes, Ellen, you can respond.
Okay, three things. My motion at the special town meeting was to bring this before the March 23rd, the March 25th annual town meeting. So all of you who have in some way felt that that's not the plan forward, that's incorrect. I've always supported having this come to the annual town meeting. That was the motion that was made at the special town meeting. Secondly, I admire and I respect all the work that has gone into the project. What I made clear, I hoped at the beginning of my comments, was it's not the project that I'm concerned about. It was the process that was used to create the project. And I'd like to address that after I make one third point to Scott. To be honest, Scott, it really did not occur to me. Something didn't seem right to me, but it was not until about 2.5 weeks before the special town meeting that I thought, wait a minute, the selectmen do have a policy about what comes up at special town meeting and annual town meeting. I was not being coy. I was not trying to wait until the last minute. I did in fact reach out to the chair to say that I had this concern and that I would probably be bringing it up at the special town meeting. So I did not make that decision the night of the special town meeting, and I did let the chair know that I had this concern, and it truly did not gel in my mind until 2 or 3 weeks before, that's what had made me uncomfortable about it. The process, not the project. And my sense about the process at this time is that we've used a plan for this new town office building that's palpably different from what we've done in the past, for the police station, for the highway garage, for schools. For these projects, a special building committee for just that building has been appointed to plan, to get input, to work with the permanent town building committee, to work with staff, and then throw a wide net to include members on that committee who are abutters to the site, to people who don't think the project's a very good idea and that you want to draw a bigger circle and let them in. To my mind, that's been missing at 51 Main Street planning. I hear all of you, and I understand you're not going to follow any thoughts I have, so I won't pursue my other suggestion about creating such a committee at this time to come back to March 23rd with their thoughts on the whole project. But I do want to make it clear that that's still true in my mind, that the process has been very different than any we've done before. And I have that discomfort with it, but I will see you all at March 23rd. And I certainly do hope and look forward to, I hope we can have some in-person meetings where people can not just listen to what is being done for 51 Main Street, but to be allowed to ask questions about, maybe even say no to some of the things that are within that project. So with that, I will leave you to your agenda, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Ellen. Okay, Scott?
Yeah, just I think to, clear up what might be a misconception, yes, we did used to form committees dedicated to a building. But it was the decision of a select board long before my time to change that to create a permanent town building committee that would then not be personally invested in any one project, but would be have expertise to make sure it comes out on time and on budget. And so, most recently, the new fire station was done through the town building committee, not through a special. The senior center renovation was done by that committee, as permanent town building committee as well. So, the process now is to use the permanent town building committee. Therefore, I believe that we're probably working with the library on that expansion as well. So we have a process that we're following, and it's what we've been following for the better part of at least 10 years.
Agreed. Tom?
I just want to also clarify, if anyone who's watching this who may somehow have an impression that the public was not invited into this process, the public very much was invited into this process. There were a number of times at annual retreat that this was presented. There's always been a willingness to have people come to any of the committees. Many of the committees in the course of discussing it were in public session. So I think that there was quite a lot of sort of community needs assessment that went into this, and many opportunities to be engaged. So I just want anyone watching this to know that it has on this program and has always been, an open, involved, sort of welcoming process, and with many touch points that people could access this program through.
Absolutely, including, meetings that we had, the select board had, where the public was invited in, where we discussed the project, where we made recommendations, where in fact we challenged the permanent town building committee at times about what their recommendations were. So the public was certainly invited in. There were public forums that were held. As Tom Hannah said, there were more than 100 meetings. So I would agree that the public has always been, it has always been open to the public for their input. I think with that, it seems to me we have at least a consensus from the board that we are going to put this on the March 23rd annual town meeting. I think as we, at a future meeting, we can talk about, what process, we can do to move the project forward, what education we might sponsor and do about this project to make sure, Tom, as you just said, that the public continues to have the opportunity to ask questions and to be involved and to speak. Any final comments from anybody? Scott?
Well, actually, one not for tonight, but to think about. So, I mean, I think a valid point that Ellen had was that, does this meet our select board criteria to bring something to special town meeting? And I think she's correct that this falls in a bit of a gray area. And, maybe as we want to think about that criteria, and one of those things we might want to add is fiscal cost to the town, because, a reason to pull forward was the current environment of cost escalation and construction. And that's not really in our key decision points. So we may want to think about in a future meeting, looking at those decision points and say, should they be amended to include something along those lines?
Agreed, and we might want to look at it to see if there's anything else that might want to be included as well. Such as, whether there is some discretion to be left to the select board as to what they put on an annual special town meeting or not. But I agree, a discussion for a later meeting. All right, with that, let's move on. Our next item is a request from the Pedestrian Safety Committee to appoint Jessica Boulanger as an alternate member for a term expiring on June 30th, 2024. Is there a motion to appoint?
So moved.
There's a second?
Second.
All those in favor, John?
Aye.
Anita?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Aye. And we have a request from the Conservation Commission to appoint Noel Almeida as a full member for a term expiring on June 30th, 2025. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
And all those in favor, John?
Aye.
Anita?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Aye. All right, any board reports or updates? I don't see any. Okay, town managers report. Jody, you up for this?
Yeah, thank you. So Eric, could you just pull up the budget policy direction, please? So we tried to simplify this, so I'm recommending that we just remove the words in fiscal year 33 from that bullet, which should clarify the capital. And if you're good with that, then please vote in favor and we'll get this posted.
Since I brought up the whole issue, I'm fine with this. So, okay, I will. In light of that, is there a motion to approve the budget directive as amended here tonight?
So moved.
Second. Yeah, all those in favor, Anita?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you. And so we're asking you to consider approval of minimum wage increases for municipal employees from $14.25 to $15 effective January 1st, 2023.
And this is just in keeping consistent with what the minimum wage is being increased to under state law.
That's correct.
Any questions? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
It looks like Scott has a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Scott. Go
I
ahead.
just felt like it's also obligatory to mention that this is where Mark was just stepped in and said, why we doing this? But and I would step in and say, because it's only fair to those who are working other jobs. So I just,
Right.
Mark, we miss you, but
He's in New Hampshire somewhere.
That's right. And they don't have a minimum wage of $15 an hour. Okay, I think we had a motion in a second. All those in favor, John?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Anita?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Thank you. And then I have a request to approve the following contracts: Westford Superior Officers Collective Bargaining Agreement for fiscal years 23 to 25. TEC Inc. for final design amendment on Boston Road reconstruction, the amount of $195,000. TEC for construction phase services on Beaverbrook Bridge for $125,000. AM Appraisal Associates for appraisal services for Boston Road reconstruction project, the amount of $33,215. Platt Real Estate and Analysts for appraisal services, the amount of $14,000. excuse me, and purchase orders modular communication for radio equipment for public safety system upgrade, the amount of $158,184.33. Boundtree Medical for bulk medical supplies, the amount of $30,000. CDWG for Microsoft Enterprise Services, the amount of $49,434.53. Site One Landscape Supply for grounds maintenance materials, and a grant from Executive Office of Elder Affairs for personnel costs, programming, social services, transportation, and administrative needs for the Council on Aging in the amount of $67,692.
Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Scott,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Rita,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
aye.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to waive reading of correspondence?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Everybody just raise their hands. Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All those in favor? Raise your hands. Great. Good night, everybody. The select board does not meet again until after Thanksgiving, so we wish everybody